Hello everyone, this is Raman, and today's lecture we will talk about interpreter and compiler. Before jumping to the compiler or interpreter, let me first talk about what is a programming language. When we write a program into a programming language, then it can be a high level language or it can be a low level language. When you write the code in a programming language and it is very much similar to your English language, then it is called the high level language. And if you write the code which is very much similar to your machine language, then it is called the low level language. Example of high level language is C, C++, Python. Example of low level language is assembly. When we write the code in any programming language, it is to be ultimately converted into the machine code. And to convert it into the machine code, we need either compiler or interpreter. So that is the main purpose of compiler or interpreter. They convert your language, either it is high level language or low level language, into machine code. If both are doing the same job, then what is the main difference? That we will see in the next slide. Okay, so let's first talk about the compiler. When we talk about the compiler, so what compiler does? So say an example, you are writing a code into any high level language, say an example in C++ language, and you have say some 100 lines of code. Okay, and this 100 lines of code is to be converted into machine language. Okay. So what the compiler does, it takes that 100 lines of code in one shot and it convert it into the machine language. If there is any error, so say an example, if you have error on say line 50 or lines 40, the error should be the syntax error, not the logical error. So if you have any syntax error, then this entire code cannot convert it into the machine language. But if everything is fine, then the entire code get converted into the machine code or machine language. So this diagram, it shows that you have the source code compiler. It will check the error messages. If there is some error messages, it will not convert it into the target program. If everything is fine, then it get converted into the target program. This target program we call the object code or the compile code, which is to be understandable by the machine language. Okay, so this is the main purpose of the compiler, and the languages which has the compiler, some examples are C, C++, C sharp, etc. Now let us talk about the interpreter. When we talk about the interpreter, in the interpreter we take the code and the code is get executed line by line. So say an example, you have a code in a language called Python. So Python is a interpreted language, so it does not have the compiler. So here, if you have say 100 lines of code, and out of this 100 lines of code, you have some error on say line number 40 or error at line number 50. So your program will get executed line by line. When it reaches to line number 40, it will stop the program. It will not execute further. And your program will be ended here. Okay. So what is interpreter? A program which translates the statement of the high level language program into machine code. It translate program one statement at a time. So examples are Python, Perl, PHP. And in this diagram, this is your source code, and source code will get executed by the interpreter at runtime. So this is at runtime. Okay. Whereas the compilation happens before execution. So, and this is during the execution. And it will convert into a intermediate code. Okay. So this code is not the entire program's compiled code, but it is the intermediate code which is executed line by line. Okay, so this is the uh, interpreter. Now let us see the difference between the compiler and interpreter. So the first difference is that compiler takes entire program in one shot, whereas it takes single line of code or instruction at a time. The compilation is done before execution, that we have discussed, right? It takes the entire program in one shot and compile it. So after that, we execute the program. Whereas in the interpreter, it executes the program line by line. So compilation as well as executions happen simultaneously. Because entire code is compiled, so it is faster as compared to the interpreter. Because it takes entire program in one shot, so and convert it into the object code, so the memory requirement is high as compared to interpreter, because interpreter is running one line at a time. It displays all the errors after compilation all at the same time, whereas here it displays the error of each line one by one. So this is the main difference between compiler and interpreter. I hope you understand the difference and importance of the compiler. Thank you very much for watching.